Right. Good morning, everybody. Thanks very much for arriving so early in the morning. Some of us had a long night last night. I hope it was a good one. If it's just a little bit just about this project, again, before I let Lee take over the actual event, just to say it's a university project. Probably I'm not the right person to talk about it. I didn't even finish school, never mind university. But anyway, few years ago, I had this brainchild that we have to add some academic value to this festival. And by meeting certain people, I came up with the idea of what I would regard as one of the flagship projects of the festival called the University Project, where we managed to connect for the first time in official manners between two universities in the States, our own University of Limerick, and since last year we have the University of Durham from the UK as part of this project, and maybe we'll add more universities from the States and maybe more universities from Ireland and maybe more universities from other parts of the world, who knows. I, for one, am very both sort of naive and ideological about it, and I think that if these people and us and you would really like to take it to the next stage, I really do believe that we have the chance to overhaul the entire way we look at collaboration of music cross-Atlantic, how we research music, how we promote music, roots music, our music, your music. And these people that sit in here, with your help, with your vision, can take it to the next level. Now, this is art, and art sometimes, when it's come to academia, being left by the wayside. Because if that was medicine or biology, there would have been money pumped into it, and university would get on board, and government would get on board. But we are the only people that have the chance to promote it in the art section and explain people the importance of art and academia. And this is what this project is all about. And I'm really glad that you take the time to come here so early in the morning to be with us. And I'm really glad that all these universities, or at least the people who represent the universities, can see the true value of what we are doing here. So thank you very much. I just want to take Paige Capo, which helped to sponsor this event, which are actually reside not too far from ETCU, and they came on board last year, and they continue to support this project this year. And hopefully I will have the chance to meet them at the end of the year and bring them over here to be part of this project. So without further ado, I'll leave you with Lee Bidgood, that will lead the panel and introduce you to the rest of the people. Thank you very much again for coming.
Thanks, Uri, and thanks to all the organizers, the team that makes this happen every year, and all the folks here in Westport that welcome folks here every year and have for 19 years now. It's kind of amazing to think about that. A sustained effort of that kind takes a lot of cooperation and a lot of work, and it's really astounding to see how it happens again every year. And the spirit of this event is so clear. It's such a pleasure to come and be reminded of what can happen when people come together and share music and share story and song. And that's what we want to talk about today. And for me, it's impossible to get there without acknowledgement. I mean, recognition. I'll continue what Uri started and go a little deeper. I think it's important to acknowledge and recognize the ancestors, the cloud of witnesses that are behind us and behind all the music that we play. In the United States, it's often customary to acknowledge the native people who were in the place before us. And I think here it's really important for us to think about the people who came before us in this music, who willingly and unwillingly were in situations where their music was prized or taken and danced to. There's difficult and amazing histories behind it all, and behind all of the things that we enjoy and live in today. Just want to put that out there. Lots of things to talk about there, and we're going to get into some of them today with these wonderful folks. We're going to go from your right to your left. I'm going to introduce folks, and then each person's going to bring up something to talk about for about 5 to 7 minutes. they each bring a different perspective on story and song. And then after we do that, we'll have some question and answer. Eager to hear what you all are thinking about as well, and what sparks from this discussion. And then after that, we're going to actually do some singing and some storytelling and work through some of the things we talk about in the first hour. Okay, to your right, Liam Purcell. He's a musician and band leader, and he grew up a mile from Doc Watson's home in the mountains of North Carolina, and he founded the band Cane Mill Road, we played with last night at the Jester, as a teenager before studying in the American Roots program at Berklee School of Music. And I know y'all love hearing the group this weekend. I always have. And I'm impressed really by the way that he and his band spoke about their music when they came to ETSU recently. So I'm eager to hear him talk today. Next, shuffling here, is Dr. Pete Ward, who currently teaches at Durham University in England, where his main discipline is theology. He spent the last 5 years researching and writing a book entitled Bluegrass and Religion that's due to be published by Bloomsbury in October. And next to him is
You got this. You got this.
Róisín Ní Ghallóglaigh.
Yeah.
Sorry, y'all. I didn't need to make such a production of it. She's an accomplished solo performer, a singer, guitarist, and composer. She currently holds the position of assistant professor in traditional Irish music at the University of Limerick. And Róisín is course director for the BA in Irish Music and for the certificate in Music and Dance at the Irish World Academy of Music and Dance. So she's here, and some of her students as well, who are really awesome. I got to hear them yesterday. And next to her is Loes van Schaijk, who is originally from the Netherlands, and for 7 years she's been playing and teaching in Prague in the Czech Republic, and that's where I met her, I think, back in the day. And she's a singer-songwriter and an instrumentalist and teacher. And I love what it says on her website. There's a lot of stuff on her website. It's really awesome. She's an amazing writer as well. She says, or someone wrote on her website, that when she sings, she pours her heart and soul into it and connects with the audience by making them smile, cry, think, and sing along. And she has a master's degree in cultural studies. She's also cultural studies and has studied pedagogy and teaching. And she researched and co-published the book High Lonesome Below Sea Level, which has beautiful photography and storytelling about people who make bluegrass and related music in the Netherlands. It's a great study. It's very cool. She's got some copies here, if you're interested. And here, next to me closely, is Kathleen Coker, who's a doctoral student in music at University College Cork, which is another, maybe we'll get Cork on there too eventually. She focuses on bluegrass in an international context, particularly in Ireland, and she's currently serving on the board of the European Bluegrass Music Association, so doing a lot of stuff regionally with the music as well. And my name's Lee Bidgood. I am a professor at East Tennessee State University, and I've done a lot of research on the Czech Republic with regard to bluegrass and related musics. And I teach in a department of Appalachian Studies and in a program we call Bluegrass, Old Time, and Roots Music Studies. So I'm really used to taking something that's really fun and making it really boring by having people write papers on it and giving lectures on it. So apologies for that, but it's going to get a lot more exciting from here. Who should go first? I think I put Liam first. Liam, you all right?
Yeah.
You want to take the mic and...
Steal a mic, possibly.
And, sorry, I didn't think about that part of it. Look,
Mr. Switch.
for you as a performer, you have a lot of roles.
That's mine, you can't have that.
How does storytelling play into your professional and your artistic work?
Absolutely. I am probably, the youngest person and least in the category of a musical academic on this stage, so I'm really looking forward to hearing what everybody has to say, and thankful to be here bringing my own portion to it. I grew up a couple of miles from Doc Watson, hearing Doc play with Charles Welsh, the Cougars, Jack Lawrence, and others was what made me want to play as a young kid. I started playing guitar when I was about 6 years old. And really quickly, the novelty of playing as a young kid wears off. And I think somebody who's taught a couple hundred students privately and in group classes, you see the people that have a love for it. And I always was interested in why people retain their love for it. For me, that mostly resides around community and the feeling you get with collaborating with other musicians. But when I think about just what attracts me to the music in the first place, it's really the storytelling, the songs, which is why I found this year's subject really, really interesting. And while I was thinking about picking a few examples, maybe something from Doc's music that could bring some connections around, I think the largest thing for me and something that I've tried to focus in on and contribute to over the course of my time as a teacher, mostly on a smaller scale, is the learning process. And when I think about where this music has come from and how it's been stewarded over many hundreds of years, down from connections here in the British Isles, connections in Africa, connections all across Europe, how it has been stewarded down through the generations to become what it is today. I always think about the vehicle of learning for that. And I think in the last 100 years, our methods of learning have changed so drastically from how this music has been preserved and cultivated for several hundred years. So I grew up in something called the Junior Appalachian Musicians Program, and a huge shout out to Helen White, who has now passed, Brett Morris, Jim Lloyd, all the folks that still keep the jam program running. It stands for Junior Appalachian Musicians, and it's a program that focuses on teaching kids Appalachian and traditional music, be it bluegrass, old time, really anything that falls under their community's musical heritage. And instead of writing a curriculum or learning from tab or learning from sheet music, the entire idea is that young people can learn in the ways that their older community members were taught, by ear, by rote, by getting into the community, by collaboration with other musicians, instead of private one-on-one lessons. And so I spent a long time teaching in that program. I've taken on a lot of private students, and we've developed curriculum and teacher training for jam. And over that entire course, it's really struck me seeing the differences in, I guess, community involvement, musical engagement, especially with young kids, and musical development in the way that people learn by ear versus people who might learn offline, out of a book, things like that. And there are a lot of ways we could go with this, so I don't know if anybody has anything else to contribute or hop in on. But
Yeah, well, I think what's one of the things that's really important is if you're sitting with someone knee to knee, teaching and learning, it's not just the notes that are passing back and forth, it's stories. Like I think the music travels
That's it,
face to
exactly.
face,
that's it,
carried
exactly.
by stories often.
And I think one of the biggest things is, what happens to these stories as they get passed around now that we are really past the point of being geographically constrained. We're at a point where anybody across the globe can hop on the internet and learn songs, learn tunes, pass on these stories that are hundreds and hundreds of years old sometimes. So I think that was my biggest thing to bring to this conversation, was just the way in which stories are passed down, and how can we create opportunities for that to continue in the way that it traditionally has in a modern era where sometimes those opportunities are not available in person. Sometimes we have really great musicians coming from places where there is no bluegrass or traditional music, and how to foster that in a great way for future generations, I guess.
Yeah, thank you so much, Liam. I wanted to just, maybe we have some time maybe to have one or two folks from the panel respond, but I held myself back from giving a short review of an article by John Beal from the early 90s, which on Bluegrass Festival stage talk by musicians. I highly recommend it. It's awesome. It's in the Journal of Ethnomusicology. If you look in the Journal of Ethnomusicology, it's one of the few articles that if you search Bluegrass, it comes up. But he talks about different kinds of stage talk. And so I was thinking about stories. How do we tell stories? He really gets into categories. It's like, what do stories do?
Did
Right?
he also research European bluegrass bands or non-American bluegrass bands, how they talk on stage? Because that would fascinate me.
Well, yeah, his sample was just 1970s festival in the States. But it makes me think, because one of the things he talks about is how the stories are an unmarked conduit. They are an unmarked thing that frames the other performance that's going on. But you don't take it, you think about them as practical. You think about the tuning, right? The stories to cover tuning, the stories to say where you're from. He goes into all these things, like all these utterances that he analyzes. But I think teaching, we were talking about this last year about jamming. What is accomplished? What are the pragmatics of a jam? And I think stories are a big part of the teaching. Anyone else want to have a thought about that? I don't want to get too functional with it, but that's something that I'm thinking about.
It's something I would have covered a couple of years ago, and we looked at the idea of performers texturing the room and kind of preparing your audience or creating a kind of a connection with them before you even perform the song or before you perform the tune. I think a lot of Irish musicians in certain performance contexts, not in sessions, but if you're on stage, there is a tendency to do that, and it's partly because you want to make yourself comfortable. You want the audience, you're bringing the audience into your world. But also, I think those connections are important to the performer, and there's a sense of legacy as well there, that you're kind of informing everybody about the legacy that you're about to introduce to them. So things like where the tune came from, who it came from, or funny stories about how you got it and ended up, woke up in a field one morning with a tune in your pocket. And, there's all of that. So I think they're all really, really important. And I think they're important to both in the moment of performance and in the overall tradition. Those stories are really, really important.
Yeah, and just the role of passing these stories down in terms of transmission, really playing a role between connecting previous generations of musicians, and oftentimes that's a big part of some types of performances, is I learned this tune from so-and-so, who learned it from so-and-so, who learned it from the person that wrote it, and you build this sort of backlog of real and maybe mythological connections,
Yeah.
So.
And I think one of the most central things to all of this is when you take the step to perform a song or tell a story, it's no longer this thing that's out there floating. You become the storyteller, and you join every previous generation of people who have carried that story or song down with you. And I think that's something really special, because there's a lot of things that you witness in person that go unsaid or unacknowledged that are part of a performance like that. And I think that's something you don't find many other places. Any of us who chooses to tell a story or sing a song, we become the voice for those words. We become the conduit for that music. And that's not something I have a ton of other examples of throughout life. So,
Nice.
yeah. Thank you all.
Yeah. Thanks. Rosie, I think you're, for whatever reason, you're next. So,
Oh, really?
Róisín
What would it be?
Ní Ghallóglaigh.
Oh, damn it. Okay, so where to start? So I was going to talk about songwriting in a traditional style and idiom, and the idea of delving into archives and I suppose where I find those stories for my songs. So, so just to give a little bit of background, I was a songwriter. I've been writing songs since I was like 13, and so songwriting was my first musical experience, and then would have gotten into traditional singing later. And as a traditional singer, I always separated them. I couldn't imagine writing a traditional song. You know, there was traditional songs with this big legacy and history, and then there was new songs. And at some point, it was actually 2016, we were having a commemoration for the 1916, so it was the centenary commemorations for the Easter Rising. And some artist and traditional singer friends, Aileen Lambert and Michael Fortune, approached me and asked me to be part of a project called the 1916 Song Project, which was amazing, and it invited all traditional singers from all over the country to compose new songs about 1916. So we started to gather in the National Library in Dublin, and we were meeting in these wonderful rooms full of archives and history, and all of us were delving into archives, and we were delving into military records, and that really started me off. So that was my first foray into traditional songwriting, and I wrote a song called Two Brothers, and it was based on a family experience of 1916 and the War of Independence, and set to a carillon melody. So I went on then to stay working with these people in various song projects, and the next project they came up with was Songs for Our Children. And this was based on the fact that a lot of traditional songs, there's great traditional songs that we teach to kids, but some of them aren't hugely appropriate. And so we were kind of thinking, well, let's see, can we build on the repertoire that's there and write some new songs for children. So with that project, I was working with kids in schools at the time, in Limerick and in Meath, where I'm from originally. And the songs that came out of that, we wrote a number of songs. One was Brave Jack Monday, which was written about the first black member of the Irish Army, who fought the Black and Tans in 1921 in Limerick, a man called Jack Monday. Then another song called An Seanach Culver, which is like a fun song about a musical fox. So lots of fun and lots of kind of dipping into archives and using old melodies as well for that. So this brought me to it was 2020, and we were still working on the Songs for Our Children project, and we had gotten funding to do another branch of that. So I was funded by Meath County Council to write a song that had a Meath focus. I decided, I had been, as part of my PhD, I'd been looking at a lot of the goddess mythology of Ireland. And growing up in Meath, I was really lucky that my parents gave me a really good sense of the geographical sense of Meath, so place names and places, and we'd go for drives every weekend and visit people all over the county, and I can say I know my county, right? But I kind of got the feeling when I was going into schools as an adult that wasn't the case anymore. So that was something that I wanted to kind of approach with this new song. But also, I grew up around the Boyne, the River Boyne, not knowing that the Boyne was named after a goddess. And I thought, well, I'm going to write a song that teaches that to kids. So when I went to look at the mythology of Boyne, when you look into the old books, the Dincensis, the stories are quite misogynistic. So Boyne was a goddess who, she was married to a man called Necton who had this magic well, and she wasn't allowed to touch it and go there, but she did. And as a result of her going there, she was taken and consumed by the well. The well burst. She was destroyed and deformed. Her very beautiful dog, that was her best friend, was also deformed. And in the course of this, the River Boyne was formed. And I thought, now hang on a second, that just doesn't make sense. For what I know of mythology, it's more likely down to, you know, the idea of fertility of the land, and I do believe that those stories passed through time and through many misogynistic hands and minds, and we ended up with these kind of stories. So when I went to write the song, I thought I'm going to reshape that without changing it too much. I'm going to reteach that mythology to children. So my approach was to create a song that included the geography of the county, the mythology of Boyne, in a way that related to agriculture and fertility and something that was good for the county and good for the land and good for the country, and also connected it to biodiversity, the environment, and the future, because our rivers are being so badly treated, and that was an important aspect of teaching. So I used these archives to retell these stories, and in this case to children. So kind of changing that narrative and including a kind of a future, an idea of I suppose, looking after what we have, and appreciating what we have environmentally, culturally, historically. Yeah, so I think I've gone on a bit too much. But yeah, I'll sing it after and you get that idea.
No, that's lovely. I love the idea of creating new traditional songs. I think often in the United States, if we're playing old-time music, you would say, oh, it's a new old-time song or something. There would be some pushback. I mean, there are a lot of people who are making new old-time tunes. That's a little more accepted these days, but I think there's still some questions about that from us. I think our folk revival related hang-ups with regard to authenticity, something in there. But that's really exciting. Pete, could I ask you? I mean, you work in the area of theology, which is an area where you come up with, you take things from this existing religious traditions, and you create new theologies sometimes. I mean, is there any connection here between the two? Am I just being too crazy, like usual?
Can I keep my religious, I think, powder dry for when I do my thing?
Okay.
But I would like to talk about Ed Sheeran.
Okay.
Because one of the things I've noticed as Tess and I have gone around and sat in on sessions is the amount of times Galway Girl gets sung.
Oh, yeah.
But also Shane MacGowan's songs, you know, Pair of Brown Eyes.
Yeah.
And it seems like when you get to the point where the person with the bouzouki gets to sing a song, quite often you get one of these slightly more modern things. And it felt to me terribly interesting that in an Irish trad session, you get these sort of really quite modern songs. And from an outsider's point of view, it looked like the tradition on a song level was renewing itself with new material. But I might have got that completely wrong, Róisín.
I think it really depends on where you are. And I know, like, in the sessions that I would be in, and maybe the lads could speak to this, if anyone was to suggest Galway Girl, they'd probably get out of the room fairly fast. It wouldn't fit in. Where it does fit in is where you have a crowd in a room and you want to include people, and that's trad. You know, so you do give there's a little bit of leeway because, okay, we're going to do Galway Girl because it means everyone can join in.
Okay.
And that's important to us as traditional. I think the students would agree with that, right? That there are times when you have to kind of go, okay, I'm going to play the Lonesome Boatman or the Galway Girl, or, you know, these kind of tunes that have become almost too popular to be trad, right? So I think you're right. They're there, but there's definitely contexts where they're not okay, and they would. So if you were to go to a singing session, depending on where the singing session is, you likely wouldn't hear the likes of Galway Girl or that, but yeah, there are definitely contexts for it. But there's another thing. Hello, Fly. There's another thing, which is somebody said to me years ago, which is one of the reasons why I mightn't have thought it okay to write my own traditional songs, is because of that authenticity thing, right? But somebody said to me years ago that the test is if the song remains sung in the tradition, right? So of the songs that I've written, there's 2 of them that people sing now in sessions. That's really magic, because that means they've been accepted into the tradition and that people can make them their own. So if you go out to Doolin, you'll hear people singing Brave Jack Monday. If you're in Limerick City, you'll hear kids singing Brave Jack Monday. It's become a song that people will include in the tradition, and it's been accepted. Again, I used a traditional melody to set that to and a traditional form, and that matters too. So there's kind of boxes to tick that make the songs more acceptable in the traditional world. There's a whole lot of that going on.
Absolutely. I want to talk about that, but I want, Loes, could you talk next? I think you mentioned some ideas of authenticity.
Doesn't Pete have more to say?
No. Well,
That was very short.
when I get my turn.
His turn is coming up.
Okay. Well, I think my story is going to be very scatterbrained because I have a lot of things popped into my head already in advance, and especially hearing everybody talk up till now. I think I'm the only non-native speaker of English at this table, maybe in the room. Are there any other people here who are not from an English-speaking country? Thank you. Nice to not be completely alone.
You're doing great.
Thank you. Great shirt, by the way, mister over there.
Right on.
So my name is Loes van Schaijk. I'm from the Netherlands, and I have an authenticity problem because I didn't grow up in a village. I grew up in between 3 villages, so outside of the borders of any village, in an area where everybody speaks every village has its own dialect. And my parents were not from there. I was born in that house, so I'm actually from there. But we spoke Dutch, official Dutch at home, and I didn't speak the dialects. And if I wanted to, when I was getting a little bit older, then I would have to choose which of the dialects of which village and with what to associate with. So I didn't do that. So I always felt like an outsider already at that place, in that house where I was born and where I grew up. And when I was young, at this moment it's very trendy in the Netherlands to sing in Dutch. But when I was growing up, it absolutely wasn't. Everything on TV was from England or America with subtitles. All the music was in English. There are so many songs that all Dutch people grew up singing in English that we thought was an American band or something, and then later you find out it's an English band. And there were a couple of Dutch songs that we thought were Dutch folk tunes, but they were translated songs brought over from somewhere else. And I hated the music that I heard around me when I was growing up, and I was always looking for something, like, where do I belong? I'm an outsider here. I'm not supposed to be here. I should have been born somewhere else. So I was always looking for some kind of connection. And ultimately, I found it scattered in lots of different places and tried to, I found out how much it means to me to be included somewhere in a small scene where people take the music very seriously, that I feel comfortable there. But then when I get too close or too much to the inside, then I feel like, but I'm not from there. I don't speak that language. I didn't grow up in if I sing, I miss the hills where I was born. I'm from a flat country that's not honest. So I always hit this wall at a certain point. And I feel like to tell my story to the audience would take too long, would be too fragmented, so it's better to not even bother. And also to share with them why some songs are important to me or how I got to know them, would either feel like I'm imitating somebody. If I would introduce an Irish song the way that they do it in Ireland, where they say, I learned this from them and they learned it from them, and that's from that area, exactly that county. Usually, I will be playing to crowds who might not even understand the language that I'm speaking in at that moment, who have no idea where that county is or whatever. So and for them, it's just a bunch of name dropping. And then maybe if they understand everything I say, they will think I'm a poser or just imitating because they know that I'm not from there. Mm-hmm. So I try. And I learned this, I think, I've been teaching at an international circus university for 7 years, and they were amazing people, and they were all sorts of things. There were people who could bend over backwards and make a roll of themselves. There were people who could stand like 5 men on top of each other, big acrobats, like square guys. They were from England, from the Netherlands, from America, but some Italians, for example, who barely spoke English. Like really, they got into the school and they hardly spoke English, and I had the honor to teach them music in all 4 of their years. And in 1 year, I taught them music history. So I was explaining music history to people who could barely say yes or no. Mm. So in those years, I tried to get a sense of who they are, where they're from, what they need, and to present it to them in a way that they can use it and not give a waterfall of stories that is too far away from what they would actually need in their work. So I started maybe dumbing down my stories, maybe making them a little bit more concise, but especially, so I'm still searching for how I want to do this. But what I mainly try to do when I perform and when I introduce my songs, when I tell my stories, I see it as this is my space, this is my living room, and the people who are in the audience, I'm showing them around my house. And I only have 1 minute to do so. So I have to quickly gauge the situation. Have these people been here before? Do they know the local customs? Do they know if they should take off their shoes or not? Where can I invite, which rooms are they allowed into? Like I can say, okay, you're here with me now, this is our public space, this is fine. There's a door which leads to loads of other doors. When I'm gone for a coffee, you can go explore by yourself. This door is mine, it's locked, you're not allowed in there. You know, so I try to quickly just tap those points. And the last thing I wanted to say is that I find the microphone a very powerful thing. You don't often have the opportunity, I don't often have the opportunity to speak and be heard, because very often I play in situations where people just have a beer and talk with their friends, and they want to hear the Galway Girl and Whiskey in the Jar, and they just want to party and sing along. And if I sing the songs that I like, they'll be on YouTube, and they won't care. So I try to engage them as much as I can. And when I have the opportunity to play to a listening audience and to tell my stories, I have to be really careful, like, what do I want them to take away from this? Because sometimes I try to explain what I meant with a song that I wrote, and people came up after me, and they got it all wrong. And I realized that maybe it's better to not say anything about it, or really just maybe highlight what I want them to take away from it and leave all the other things open. Because I intentionally write my songs to be ambiguous, which actually makes it impossible to explain them to an audience. Yeah, so I think those are the little bits that I wanted to drop into the discussion. And for me, I love going to a concert by a Scottish songwriter in Scotland when they talk through their Scottish audience about a part in Scotland where they grew up and a certain type of bird that lives there and everything, and the audience is like, yeah, we all know this, and they have this connection. I'm kind of envious, and I'm also a little bit like giddy to be a part of it. It's like nobody knows I'm Dutch and I'm a stranger here. And then the next time I step on stage, I think, okay, now I'm going to do the exact same thing, or I'm going to make a political statement or whatever, and I never do. I always hold back from it. So I always think that my stories, I don't get them across when I perform and when I introduce my songs. The stories are in the songs, and if anybody's really interested, they can analyze them, and they get out of it what they want to.
Nice.
Well, we'll visit your living room tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right? We can see. Well, thank you. Any thoughts or responses to?
Just one quick thing, and that resonates a lot, and I think it's about context a lot of the time and where you're singing and who's in the room. But I very often at song sessions, which isn't the place for big introductions, long introductions, because everyone's like waiting for their turn to sing their song that they've prepared and have ready, you know. And somebody will always shout out, "We don't need the liner notes," you know. And so there's a lot to be said for just singing the song. Yeah.
I love the liner notes personally, but I'm a nerd, so...
Yeah, me too. Me too. But there's a time and place, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. I would love to talk for hours to you. But I guess specifically, I can really only speak to the American musics. But one of the great things about American string band music and bluegrass in particular is that it's not a traditional music that belongs to a certain group of people. It belongs to everybody that plays it. And so that is your invitation, if I may be so bold, to stand in the fact that you belong. You're part of the community, and so you are. And it's really nice with these very, drawing on sort of Torino's ideas of participatory musics. That's one way that we all find community. The music's job is to facilitate these deeper interpersonal connections and regular meetings and, utilizing a third space. And there's so many things that music does in these types of environments outside of having a skill and playing together. But that's all I want to say.
Thank you.
To respond to your idea of authenticity and belonging in a sense of music, and I think the phrase that comes to mind is like your ownership of your portion of the music, right? I would just ask, not a question to respond to necessarily unless anyone feels moved to, but a question for all of us to ask is, who bears the weight of authenticity in your mind, and who is the judge of that? Is it us when we step up to the microphone? Are we asserting that we belong in this music and that we have the right to be there, we have the right to be a part of the community? Or does it fall on the listener, the audience, to learn maybe the few things they can about you, your life, and your career, and make a judgment about that? That's always been something that's fascinated me. I grew up in the mountains. I grew up in a rural place, in a rural community. I've worked on farms, agriculture, cattle, horses. And in a lot of ways, I think that makes people look at me differently when I play old-time string band music. But what would you think about me if I grew up playing video games? If I grew up in the Midwest? I think those are interesting things to think about when we think about our own place in the music, and also before we jump to making judgments about someone else's belonging in music. I think it's really fascinating to me as a performer to be a fly on the wall in some of those conversations about listeners, not in the realm of bluegrass, but I'll pick an example from country music with Zach Top, who is currently one of the hottest country acts in the States, and is being praised for reviving a 90s country tradition and praised for his authenticity. And he's a wonderful guy, but he's from Oregon, and he doesn't have that accent at all when he talks. And, an interesting question for all of us in the van is, well, does he have to? And for me, that answer is no. I think it's such an interesting thing to hear your experience on all of that, and I would second that invitation for certain.
Thank you. Lee said that I'd written this book, which comes out in October, called Bluegrass and Religion. And as part of the process for doing that, I did an online survey where I put up some songs, particularly gospel songs, that are standards played at jams in bluegrass, and invited people to make some comments. And I wanted to share with you some of what I found about a popular song, Keep on the Sunny Side, which most people know, keep on the sunny side, always on, that one. I'll read you the lyrics because you may not think. There's a dark and a troubled side of life. There's a bright and a sunny side too. Though we meet with darkness and strife, the sunny side we also may view. Keep on the sunny side, keep on the sunny side. Blah, blah, blah. It will help us every day, brighten every way, keep on the sunny side of life. Second verse, though the storm in its fury break today, crushing hopes that we cherish so dear, storm and cloud will in time pass away, the sun again will shine bright and clear. And then there's a third verse where things become slightly more Christian and theological, really. Let us greet with a song of hope each day, though the moments may be cloudy or fair. Let us trust in our Saviour always, who keepeth everyone in his care. Now, the song was written by, now I always get this lady mixed up with someone else. It was written by somebody called Ada Blenkhorn, and it appeared at the end of the 19th century in a hymn collection. But I suppose what made it most popular was its recording and then use and reuse as the theme song for the Carter family. And then more recently, it appeared in the film Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? People say that Ada Blenkhorn wrote Keep on the Sunny Side because she had a disabled nephew, and the nephew, when being wheeled in his wheelchair, would always ask to be wheeled on the sunny side. So there's that kind of story of origins about the thing. But I asked the people on my survey, firstly, is Keep on the Sunny Side a good motto for your life? Is that a good way of living? And then I also asked them, is the third verse the clue to the meaning of the song? In other words, how do you take that? And I was going to read you some of their responses. Somebody said, I think the last verse is key to understanding what the song means for people in the past who sang it. And when I sing it, I feel like it always gives me access to a point of view more than express my own. Now, something I came across quite a lot in my research was this feeling that the music, bluegrass music, and particularly the gospel songs, it might not be where I am at spiritually or religiously, but it's where people were at. And I'm re-expressing that sentiment. And I respect that sentiment and value it because of its connection to a past is interesting. Here's another person. Interesting question. Based upon your story of how the song was inspired, I would say the inclusion of trusting in the Saviour was written out of religious obligation, but truly in line with the type of thinking. In other words, people wrote that kind of song then, and they felt obliged to include this religious angle to the song. I'll read you one or two others. I thought of it as a gospel song, but then I started using it in a nursing home that I play in. And everyone is so smiley, and now I do think of it as a rule for life. I especially love the word greet in the last verse, as greet in Scotland means to cry. It reminds me of a grumpy old guitar player who became a very good friend, and also that some of the sad moments in life become the most important and maybe even joyful experiences when you look back on them. So that people connect the song to the stories of their life and meaningful. The song becomes more meaningful because these layers of association. So it's not just a historic, it was like for them. For this person, singing it in a nursing home created a new environment for the song. I'll read you two more and then I'll stop. My dad used to sing us this song. He grew up in the Great American Depression in the 1930s and fought in World War II and suffered from injuries for many years from the war. His motto was this song. We often omit the last verse. The religious connotation kind of detracts from the song. And that verse has always seemed like an afterthought, put in for commercial reasons.
Yeah.
Isn't it? But so you've got this beautiful association with a father who's been through the Depression and the World War II. And yet the religious bit, they would rather turn. Quite a few people said we never sing the third verse. Mm-hmm. I'll ring my favourite quote about this. I think the last verse takes a nice song and makes it weirdly religious. So there's kind of one Cantwell, I think, says that bluegrass is a religious discourse in a secular context. And I think what we see is this conversation about what's meaningful in life, the stories that make a song meaningful, and the associations, why it moves people. And yet at the same time, people feeling okay to either buy into the religious message of the songs, or renegotiate it, or actually reject it and be cynical about it, and cynical about it. And what I think is really interesting about the bluegrass world is, well, I think it's really interesting that Uri has this gospel thing tomorrow morning and has had that. I think that's really, really interesting, because there'll be people in the audience who are not religious loving the songs. There'll be people that are really religious and they're going, yeah, that's the message, man. And there'll be some people on stage that'll be saying, that's really the message, I'm trying to get it to you. And there'll be other people that'll be going, well, it's not really my thing, but I like the song. Yeah. And we have this mixture around, don't we? Mixture of stories. And that's one of the things that's fascinated me about bluegrass.
Any thoughts on that? Quick thoughts? Lots there.
Lots. Lots. I think I really resonate with your last two.
The weirdly religious.
It feels like, for me, it feels like a lone verse, or what we'd call in the Irish tradition, you know, a floating verse that came in later. But I don't know anything about the history of the song, or what verses were printed or found, you know, to say that might have happened. But for sure, I think there are people who could have, at some point of history, that connection with religion, where, okay, I can't sing about that positive side of life without bringing God into it, and that's important for them, and so I can see where that would work too, you know. And then it just on a not completely different, but you brought me back to a very long time ago to a great lecturer, Vic Gammon. Do you know him?
Well,
Vic Gammon was a Newcastle lecturer, and he was a great man, and he introduced me to American music, the South.
we live in the same town now.
Yeah.
So we play sessions together.
Yeah,
me and Vic.
well, he'll remember me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll say that.
So with Vic, we would have looked at music that went from the Hebrides, and it was religious music, and he played this music. I was like, what? That's very bluegrassy. That's very, to me, it sounded Appalachian. And not saying I'm not an expert in that world, but that was what it invoked for me. And so that religious connection has to have been there from a very early stage. So it would bring me then to think, well, maybe those verses do belong in those songs and were there from the beginning. So I don't know, but it raises loads of really interesting questions, I think, for me. Really interesting.
I suspect the verse was written by Ada Blanchon, because it was published in a hymn book. But
okay.
What I think is interesting, and I agree with you about the Hebrides, you know, the psalm singing of that Scottish Presbyterian world is so like lining out that you hear in Appalachia and so on. But what's interesting is the persistence of a very religious element in this music and at events where not everyone is very religious and some people are quite anti-religious. But it's the fact that it stays as a sort of visitor, as a sort of an echo, that fascinates me.
Yeah.
Well, I think so the Netherlands is a very atheist country, and the gospel songs are the most popular ones because people yearn for harmony singing. And most people in the bluegrass scene in the Netherlands feel that the gospel songs are the best ones for groups to sing along. You quickly learn them, they have catchy melodies, and there are even some people who are very excited about harmony singing. They even have 4 parts sometimes, and the bass, someone who has a low voice can show off by doing that's not in the sunny side, but in some other gospels. And I grew up as an atheist, then I lived in the United States for a while, had a very intense evangelical hallelujah phase, and then I became an atheist again. We can chat about that later. But so I have experienced what it's like to sing these religious songs when you actually believe, And after that, I didn't want to sing them anymore because I feel like it's disrespectful if I don't believe in it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sing religious songs. And I've had to explain this time and time again to atheist bluegrass groups who want to put on cowboy hats and sing gospel songs. And it's a discussion I get in every time, and I thought it's a thing that we have in the European bluegrass scene, but I realized that it's also going on probably in America
think it's
and in
everywhere.
England, the same.
Yeah.
But I think it has a lot to do with the endorphins that free up when you sing harmonies, and just, most of those songs have the best ones. They're
Yeah.
really catchy, because so I'm a music teacher also, and when I teach vocal harmony workshops at a festival or something, you have 1 hour to get people singing, and the high, lonesome, like hard-driving bluegrass songs, they have very difficult choruses. It's usually the gospel songs that are a little bit easier or more communal. So I'm always looking for secular songs that I can sing with any kind of group that have easy to learn harmonies and that are pleasant to sing, even if you don't have a very high voice or cannot do the ornaments. That's a challenge. So I'd also be interested in hearing from you about those things.
You need to do like Rosie and compose more secular hymns. Right, Kathleen?
There is this band, I think, the Agnostic Gospel Choir, or isn't there?
It sounds very
These-
appropriate.
Yeah, but they sing very dark, like anti-gospel songs. Appalachian Agnostic Choir, or what are they called?
Wow.
Kathleen?
Yeah, so much to talk about here. My take on first, thanks to Lee for putting this all together and this really great prompt for all of us. Stories we tell about music and connecting, the old and new worlds. I went with a little bit more of a global view rather than a personal one here. And so when I was sort of reflecting on the theme, it posed the question to me, well, whose stories are we telling and what connections are those stories making? We've talked about being teachers and tune transmission and authenticity and interpretation and reinterpretation and all of these really great things. But reflecting on that, who is included and what are those connections making, really brought up the critical role that African American creativity has played in so many iterations of the musical landscape in the United States, and certainly string band music for gosh, many, many years, hundreds of years. And despite the fact that we have less surviving documentation of the ways that they have taught and mentored and innovated the tradition and sustained practice and individual stories and recordings, that doesn't mean that they weren't participating, they just weren't written down. And so part of, I think, our job as people in the field, as academics, certainly as people writing things, we need to reflect on our position of power with that, because there are stories and voices that have been omitted because people chose not to write them down. People chose not to record them. And so I think that one of the things that I wanted to toss out on the table is when we're connecting with the old world and previous generations, making sure that we don't just go for the common narratives. Make sure that you're looking at the whole past, and the narrative of belonging and participation should expand in both directions, into the past and also into the future. And kind of the piece that I chose to play that we'll pick later on is actually from a 1946 recording it's online, you can find it, by a black string band group from Warren, Tennessee, made up of three men, Murphy Gribble, John Lusk, and Albert York. And there are a series of field recordings that were made by different ethnomusicologists or researchers over the years, but I think there's some in 1946, some in maybe the early 60s, and some in the late 60s, if I'm not mistaken. But that stood out to me as something that should be more prevalent in our discussions about history and origin, that is there. So I guess that's all I've, a tight 5 minutes, yeah.
Well, and I think if folks need to step out, well, this is an acknowledgement of the body. And if you need to go to the bathroom or whatever else, get some coffee, that's great. But we're going to transition now into, I don't know, maybe, I'm always questioning, was it a good idea to separate it all out? But now we're at a point where we got to make some music. So let's shuffle around, and we're gonna have some examples. But while we do that, I wondered if there's any questions from y'all in the audience, things that have clicked with you all.
Yes, sir. Well, I guess the whole, authenticity and belonging and so on, I think is key. One of the things that's come up with some of the folks, I'm with Galway, I'm sorry, but some of the people who are with me here this weekend, I think it's fair to say this is their first full radioactive exposure to pure bluegrass. But one of the things that came up was a concern about authenticity, and that some of these songs, maybe they should be sung with an American accent, right? And they actually sound better with an American accent. And there's a great example yesterday in the Burnett sisters. Gary, I think the gentleman.
Geary, yeah.
He's amazing. He so sings with an authentic American accent, and it just really works, But one of the things I notice when I try and do some of these songs as well is I do feel like a fake, like an imposter. But at the same time, I think it sounds much better, with that American accent. Scottish music is another one that springs to mind. There's a lady called Karina Polwood, who's a songwriter, and she sings with her Scottish accent on. Like you can hear, But there's other Scottish singers, like Sheena Easton was one of them. You couldn't tell that she was from Scotland. So I'd just be interested in the panel's thoughts on that, because obviously, if you talk about musical accents like licks and things, that bring you into the style of music. But when it comes to the vocal aspect of it as well, there's genuine human linguistic accents that I think play a role. Linguistic accents.
Yeah, exactly. The Corinne Polwart was exactly who I had in mind when I was referencing to the Scottish birds. And I saw her concert, and she takes a long time to introduce her songs, and it's just so real, and also the way she sings. I've actually started the last couple of years, I'm gradually slipping back into my Dutch accent, because I feel like that's more authentic. When I was young, like I said, I lived in the United States for a year, and I did everything I can to sound as American as possible. And then at a certain moment, I heard other Dutch people speak with an American accent, and I thought, that's awful. That's just so fake. And then I realized that the more I try, the more obvious it actually is that I'm not from there. And then when I started moving around, and I moved to the Czech Republic, and I speak with and I work in an Irish bar where I speak with people from Ireland, and then I have this, because I'm a musician, I have a tendency to imitate what I hear. If I start imitating the Irish accent, it's really awkward. So I guess it just naturally, as I get older also, I get this thick Dutch accent that I was ashamed of when I was younger, and now I'm gradually getting, not proud of it, but I'm feeling more comfortable. And I even don't try to hide it when I sing, because I think if I sing my own songs, some Irish traditional songs, some Scottish traditional songs, some American traditional songs, it's better if I have the same accent throughout than if I would go like with this southern twang for one song, and then especially with the Scottish songs, sometimes they're with a little accent, but sometimes they're actually in Scottish English with some different words, and then it's like, if I don't speak that language, who am I to sing it like that, to imitate it phonetically? So yeah, this Dutch farmer's accent, it's not the most sexy thing, but I think it's me, so I'm getting to embrace that.
It's really interesting. I think it's a negotiation in a way, and I think you have to, for me anyway, sometimes the accent and the music is really connected. So if I change too much the accent from how I learned it, it changes musically. So then I am in a process of negotiation with that, and that can change over time. So, and it does change over time. And I also learn from, because I wasn't born an Irish speaker, something I came to as an adult. And so when I learn Irish songs, I'm learning from people from different regional, different Gaeltachty. So they've got different accents and different ways of speaking Irish. And I have to make that negotiation again there. So my tendency is to, if the teacher gives it to me a certain way, I'm going to sing it how I got it. And then my identity comes out eventually in that. So I think it's a constant negotiation.
Yeah,
And it has to be authentic.
yeah.
It has to be.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think in the process of learning, first you try to honor your teacher by copying it as precisely as they
Absolutely.
taught it to you, to see if you understood. And the more it gets into your body and into your voice, it becomes, you change it and it becomes you.
Because if we didn't do that, we mightn't have bluegrass, you know, because people mightn't have gone to America and changed how they sang the songs that they did or played the music that they played. So I think that's it's a really good question. It's really important.
To me, a lot of this is also a conversation of perception as well, and I'd be curious to talk to some of you all about your perception of that. You know, we've had this uncomfortable reckoning in American culture since around the time I was born of weeding out what things we collectively feel are culturally appropriated, what things we've fallen into that we don't claim ownership of, I guess, as white Americans. And that's still very much unfolding. And it's not a comfy process at all, but I think it's made specifically people in America keenly aware of kind of the subtleties surrounding that. So when I hear that question, I think to myself, if I was singing an Irish song, I love the Chieftains, I love, you know, the High Kings, stuff like that. I wouldn't sing it in their accent. I would feel distinctly uncomfortable because of the conversations surrounding, you know, other cultures' musics when I was growing up. And I'm really curious to hear what that's like from the other side. Because when I think about somebody from Ireland singing with an American accent, of course, that sounds normal to me. I don't think twice about it. And so I wonder how that is from the other side, and I wonder how each of our culture's perception shifts our understanding of all of that, you know, because even within American culture, we have people singing with country accents who don't have country accents. We have people erasing their accents to fit in. I spent 4 years in Boston in college, and I really quickly lost the way that I grew up talking. It only really comes out when I'm around my family anymore because, you know, I was made fun of for having a country accent. And you know, things that we do have the power to change over the course of our life, and it's interesting to hear that you have kind of come back to that in a way, and that's heartening, you know. But that's anybody can feel free to respond to that too, because the perception portion of it is so interesting to me. And don't worry, we won't think twice about you singing with an American accent.
I think we could have gone a little bit longer time.
Yep.
And we're going to music. However, I know we're going long, and we covered a lot of subject between theology, between authenticity, writing song. I have personally one quick question that I want to ask, and it's particularly for Liam, but it's based on something that Róisín said. Róisín said that when you're in a performance there, maybe in the Irish circuit, when an artist want to bring you to their story, they tell you how they found the song in the field, or this is a fiddle tune from such and such. In bluegrass, what I noticed when I started listening to bluegrass, that in bluegrass performances, the artists always make a point to say, I'm Liam Purcell from Boone, North Carolina, I currently reside in Nashville, Tennessee, or this is my banjo player. The way you introduce the band members, always say he is from X, Y, and Z currently reside in such and such. And I wonder, is that time wasted to tune your instrument? Is it really important, or is it a storytelling? Why, like, do you actually consider it to be a story as part of the song? Because it's not always at the same part. Like, do you always introduce the band in such form before a particular song? And we can do it very quick. I'm sorry. The question was long, but the answer could be short.
I think introducing the people that I play with that work for me in that way, it's a matter of respect for certain, to their identity. And for me, introducing us on stage, you know, we're based out of Nashville these days. That's where I moved after Boston. I never said residing in Boston because I didn't identify with that place very much, but I always, it's a huge part of who I am as a person, the place I grew up, the culture I grew up in. And that's not the case with everyone who has ever worked for me. I'll always ask, you know, how do you want to be introduced? What things do you want me to mention? Because we have really complicated stories, and maybe my perception of their story isn't the version that they feel represents them best, things like that. We have other performers on stage as well, if anybody else wants to speak to that.
Well, I think it's very interesting that you brought it up, because for me, that's one of the first things that I learned when I moved from the rock scene to the bluegrass scene. That Eugene O'Brien, who was playing in Sons of Neverone at that time, he said, Luce, you have to introduce the band members as soon as possible. Like after the first, you play 1 or 2 songs in the beginning, then you start introducing the band members, because that's part of the experience for people. They want to have a connection with everybody on stage.
It's like telling the story of the band. You have to tell
Yeah.
characters are.
But when you, I think now we are all in the scene, so for us it's obvious, but can you go back to when maybe you didn't know the music yet? Like in rock and pop, it's just so standard that they play the whole night. They dance around a little bit, and then the very last song, there's always this part where at the end they riff a little bit, and then it's like, ladies and gentlemen, on the guitar, this guy. And it's like, what do we care now? You know, we've been watching them all night. Why should? And it's actually, it was so funny to me that I never, it was so, that's just normal in a lot of genres. And actually, when you realize, when you think about it, it's just weird. Why introduce the band members at the end when they're going home already? It's like, now I know your name and now you're leaving the stage. And that's one of the things that I really like about traditional music or folk music, be it, because I think in Irish traditional music they do it as well, right? Say where somebody's from, like especially the county or maybe a little village. Yeah. And in bluegrass also, and the more specific you get, the nicer it is, especially if there's people in the audience who are also from there. Exactly. You get some shout outs and everything. It's so nice, I just love it. It completely changes the rest of the show. Yeah.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Kathleen, let's do your song.
Yeah.
Can you do it?
Yeah.
All right, well, we're going to shuffle a little bit. Again, Liberty, License to Move. So this is the Across the Sea?
Yes. So this is Across the Sea. It's in D, and it's from the 1946 field recording by Margot Mayo of Gribble, Lusk, and York. You can find it on the Library of Congress website. Do you want to do it like fiddle tune style, or do you want to do it like trade?
Let's do it together.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
or
I definitely need the words because it's been a while since I've sung it. So, anyone from Meath in the audience? No? We don't get out much. Mind you, I met someone I went to primary school with in the pub last night. So there are Meath people in Westport. For those of you, all of you who aren't from Meath, I'm about to bring you on a journey through the county of Meath from the source of the River Boyne to the sea. And in that you'll hear about the origin myth of the Boyne through Bowen, the river goddess. Could I have an A? Thank you. Long, long ago, when our fields were dry and where no seed could grow, our Bowen heard the bitter cry of hunger, fear, and woe. Her watery form, long held by spells in Nocton's secret well, would soon return her to the soil, her hunger for to quell. She walked 3 times against the sun and plucked the hazel tree, and she waited with her hound so large for the waters to come free. She was then reborn in her true form, a wondrous flowing stream, and her waters she did give to us upon the plains of Meath. She weaved her way from Carbery through Clonard and Edenderry, leaving in her wake the richest plains, their people all fed and merry. Her rings of gold which she had adorned were gifted to the poets, her beauty to the artists, and her knowledge to the druids. First east, then west, then east again she flows towards Board's Mill. In truth, her finest beauty is unveiled to us in trim. Longside the ruined abbey, her white swan still floats by. All on her glistening waters they weave between the lights. From Skurlock's town to Bective she powered homes and mills, before she travelled northeast in the shadow of Tara's hills. She weaved and danced through Navan, where through the caves she goes, meets up with the black water, and on downstream she flows. She swooped through Slane, turned south again, her sacred cow in tow, which she left to graze at Rossnary, where the finest grasses grow. From Nouth and Douth to Drogheda, before she reached the sea, where the soft brown banks of Betty's town were shaped in her glory. Now Bowen lives immortal in the dark streams of our land, in the rich plains that for centuries were made fertile by her hand. She gave us life and left us with a legacy so great, when her waters she did give to us, all on the plains of Meath.
I love that, and I love the idea of making new songs, right? If y'all have ever heard of Jake Blunt, he's a musician who is African American. He plays old time music, he plays fiddle, he plays banjo. And I love his integration of Afrofuturism and other things into what he's doing to imagine a future and to reimagine, like you have done, that myth, those stories, into something that goes beyond these gender dynamics and reshapes it into something that is hopeful and beautiful.
Thank you.
I love that. Thank you. Pete? Look, you're all ready to go. You brought a stand and everything.
I brought it, yeah. We need to have a discussion about guitar stands on this stage, don't we? Everyone puts their instruments on the floor. Anyway, so yeah, that conversation about Jake Blunt, the song I want to play is called Shallow Brown.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a sea shanty originally. And when I first heard it, it was the Watersons. Often when I'm looking for things to do, I go through YouTube. And I found the Watersons version, and they sing this song in a very kind of harmony, choir type. Shallow, shallow road. Well, no, I'm being a bit. And so when I go for I want to do a version. I don't want to do a cover version. I want to do a version. And there are two ways that I go about trying to make a version of a traditional song. The one is change the time sequence. So I'll either slow it down or speed it up. In this case, I've sped it up. And the other way that I go about, so it's a rhythmic change. And the other way that I'll go about trying to change the performance of a traditional song is what I would call a twiddle on the guitar. If I can get a twiddle, the twiddle leads me into the way I'm going to create my version of it. And so this is my version of Shallow Brown. Fare thee well, my Juliana, shallow, shallow brown. Fare thee well, my Juliana, shallow, shallow brown. Oh, it's shallow in the morning, shallow, shallow brown, just as the day is dawning. Shallow, shallow brown. Puppy clothes in order, shallow, shallow brown. Our packet leaves tomorrow, shallow, shallow brown. In the corner lies me baby, shallow, shallow brown. I want no other lady, shallow, shallow brown. Fare thee well, my Juliana, shallow, shallow brown. Fare thee well, my Juliana, shallow, shallow brown. Shallow, shallow brown. Shallow, shallow brown.
I think about what's the theology of just keep on the sunny side. It's just as mysterious to me. Like, what does the shallow brown? I've heard that for years now. I still don't know what's going on with that song, but I love it. You know, in the same way that I don't really know what's going on with Sunnyside. But
Well, I mean, I just heard the YouTube thing and then made my version of it. But in preparation for this, I went and looked at mainly Norfolk and a little bit of the history. And well, what do you think it is? You might know, Róisín.
I know it as a sea shanty, Sally Brown, and Boys of the Loch would have done it. I shipped on board off the Liverpool liner, way, hey, roll and go. And we rolled all night, we rolled all day, and we spent all our money on Sally Brown.
Right.
So, like many sea shanties, they've had millions of lives and millions of interpretations, I think.
They do.
Yeah, but
Well,
I've heard Shallow as well.
What I read on mainly Norfolk was that there's a version of this that was collected by Cecil Sharp in the West Indies, and that there are versions that refer to the selling of people into working on a ship. So there are references to people that were enslaved in its history, which is
Yeah.
you know,
I think Dorflinger writes about it.
uh-huh.
well, and there's been some recent scholarship about sea shanties after the COVID era sea shanty fad that was going on.
Yeah.
Talk to Rev Carr about that. Anyhow, but the history is, the sea shanties were a technology to enable the loading of cargoes into ships. It was to coordinate and to motivate the packing of
Work songs.
cotton and
Yeah.
everything,
Yeah.
the screwing of cotton into the holds of all these ships to maximize the profit on the transatlantic journey. So the shanties were a safety measure, like OSHA, like to coordinate work and labor, application of force of people working together, and then also to keep spirits up. And the people who sang shanties, they were always people of color, for the most part. And the singers were prized more and were sometimes paid more than the normal laborers because their labor was so important for that process. Fascinating.
It's fascinating genre, and it's really important to recognise the tradition of work songs on the west coast of Africa, in Senegal and Ghana and all of those places, and that's going back hundreds of years, and it's still a practice today. So I think there's loads of layers to that. But if you look at particularly at Dorflinger's sea shanty book, it's quite a racist genre, you know, and there's a lot of really questionable lyrics in there that make it, you know. So while on one hand I love sea shanties, they're so interesting, on the other hand I do kind of stay away from them a bit.
Yeah, but uncovering that history is that it is songs that were sung by people of color in those holds working, and it's really, we don't realize, because a lot of the ones that were collected and preserved in the books were by white singers later who took over in the 19th century later on. So it transformed in the same way that people think of the banjo as a white instrument today.
Yeah.
But as this book and the work of Christina Gaddy and Rhiannon Giddens, who was here last year, have reposed our views on the history of the banjo.
Yeah.
So likewise, sea shanty.
Yeah.
Liam, do you have something you want to do?
I'd be happy to. Could I borrow a guitar from someone?
Talk to our guitarist.
Yeah, you probably won't recognize it.
Oh, it's
Dag Gabbett. Oh, is it? So it's mine.
I was going to ask
But
you
I
what
don't
you
think that's before Dag Gabbett. There you go, there's a real one.
I was going to ask you what your tune was.
Dag Gabbett.
Well, I thought of a lot of things I could do, but I think I'd just like to tell you a story of my own, since this is what we're doing here. I think I enjoy introducing songs, but it can get to the point where it's like dissecting a frog. You know, you figure out how it works, but it dies in the process. So I'm just gonna play.
Yeah, it's a good analogy.
On a lonely hilltop, back road dead end, it made the world stop. I had an acre in Daddy's name, but 20 was my dream. And I'd work hard to get my wage before I ever came of age, dreaming about the day when that hollow belonged to me. So then one day a man came looking with a shiny truck he was good at building. When he saw that valley, he saw a different shade of green. 20,000 in the bank, 60 bought the deed. I was still a young man when they brought in their machines. 'Cause one man's dream's another man's dollar. Now they're tearing up the holler. 'Cause dreams don't spend, good land sells, and rich men get their way. It don't matter if you work harder, they've been playing their games for longer. There's nothing much that I can do now to stand in the way. Fall they came and stripped the timber. They had it cleared by mid-December. Watching from the window made a young man's heart grow hard. And by spring they'd built a dozen homes. Then came time to pave the road. He got him an easement and it ran through Daddy's yard. One man's dream's another man's dollar. Now they're tearing up the holler. 'Cause dreams don't spend, good land sells, and rich men get their way. It don't matter if you work harder, they've been playing their games for longer. There's nothing much that I can do now to stand in the way. Missed my chances, or did my prayers just go unanswered? Is progress on its march, and I'm just in the way? We're cutting by on borrowed dime. They say money comes with time, but someday there won't be nothing left to save. Because one man's dream's another man's dollar. Now they're tearing up the hollow. Oh, 'cause I got so far and worked much harder. They've been playing their games for longer. There's nothing much a man can do now to stand away. Thank you. It's a song I wrote for my dad about the place we grew up in the mountains that was recently, as about the time I moved out for college, about 40, 50 acres right there around the home place was sold off to build housing developments. It's an original song, but I drew on a lot of stories that I'd grown up singing relating to loss of place, loss of land, and somewhat loss of identity along with that. Stories that I'd sung without relating to in the way that I did after that happened. So there's my story connection. Thank you for the guitar.
Well, I think y'all are going to rock it out. So I had something that I was going to add in too. I spend a lot of my time with this music, more so than performing. I spend teaching, and which I want to change that ratio, but it's hard. But in my teaching, I came across a long time ago this song, a recording of a song on Jordan's stormy banks I stand. It's a hymn that some folks might have sung. It was recorded in the 1976 by Benny and Idri Clifton in Virginia. And it's always struck me, and it's been in my ears and my head for a long time. But it came back to me this winter and spring after the flooding that happened in western North Carolina. And we're thinking about rivers and water and the different things that water can do. You know, development, compaction of soil when you're living in a land that has a lot of gradient changes everything. And it did for us in our part of the country. There's a terrible storm that happened, and water levels at a river 10 meters above where they are, 28, 30 feet above where they should have been, where they normally are. Really catastrophic. And so, we're thinking of our art responses, music responses. How do we think about this? And this hymn to me, and the way they sang it, spoke to it. You can also, and I love this idea of contrafact, of like the musicological, the music understanding of parody, where you, like George Herbert did or other people have done, to reshape meaning and make new things. Make the secular sacred, make the sacred secular. And my favorite example is this same text can be sung to Don't Let Your Deal Go Down, as it was by Alfred Carnes and the Bristol Sessions, recorded not too far from where. Da 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 da, shines one eternal day. I mean, just think of that tune, text, combination, and then the one that I'm going to sing a little bit of. And I love, they come out of a primitive Baptist background. And one of the technologies the primitive Baptist folks do that is spiritual, there's stories of people who got a tune from Jesus, from a divine source, and then they set it to a hymn text that's in their hymn book, and then they sing it in their congregation in western North Carolina. So I love that there's that. I think that's something we can access to reshape and address things in different ways. All right. On Jordan's stormy bank I stand, and cast a wishful eye to Canaan's fair and happy land, where my possessions lie. O'er all those wide extended plains shines one eternal day. There God the Son forever reigns, and scatters night away. No chilling wind or poisonous breath can reach that healthful shore. No sickness and sorrow, pain and death are feared and felt no more. When shall I reach that happy place and be forever blessed? When shall I see my Father's face and in his bosom rest? In the recording afterwards, it's a couple. They actually sing it in harmony, which is interesting for the tradition. Afterwards, in the recording, you can hear. Oh, you want to hear an old one now? No, that's an old one. Yeah, it's one that's very. Yeah, there's a lot of different versions of it, and it was first published in 1770 something. Text by Samuel Stinnett, an English text creator and set to all sorts of different tunes. Yeah, that tune is called Pilgrim, in the primitive Baptist use. So it's switched around. Yeah.
I actually wonder if there's a statistic or a researchable quality among people who are in the traditional music scene, that they have more of a fascination with death, or think about what is about the people before them who have already died, and let their voices echo on, and already think of how they are going to die at some point. When you grow up living in the Netherlands, there's always, we have it very good over there, and we know it, and a lot of people just enjoy life and are very happy and easy-go-lucky. But you are in a certain way aware that at one point the water's gonna take the country back. And it's really strange that nobody's really afraid of it in everyday life, and we laugh about it, but it is a very serious threat. We just don't know when it's gonna happen. We learn in school about the floods that have happened in the past, some very serious ones in Zealand, and we learn to appreciate the technology of the dikes and the deltawerken that keep the water out. We also know that they're not in very good condition at the moment, and there's a lot of people. There's a lot of work for people who study the engineering and who work with water. So there is this fascination with water and a deep respect for it, and also I always have a fascination with stories that are retold from from the point of view of a different character. I think in movies there was a trend recently, already for a while it's been going on, to do movies from the villain's where the villain is the main character, like Wicked, or the witch is the main character, and those kinds of things. So I wrote this song, or I wrote the lyrics to this song, when I was collaborating with a composer named Tim de Man, and we had a duo together called Lucy and the Man. He wrote beautiful music that always, when I listened to his music, it evoked an image in my mind. And when I heard this music, at that moment I was obsessed with the song Three Fishers. That is an old English poem that set to music by various people. Stan Rogers made it famous in Canada, and the Ducks recorded it, and I knew their version, about a shipwreck. And also Clydewater that I heard from Nick Jones, and a lot of for some reason I'm fascinated by folk songs about drowning, which is, I really hope is not the way I'm going to go. And I wrote this song from the perspective of the culprits, the wind and the water, the ones who were responsible for the deaths of many, many people. And I'll leave it at that. Joining me will be, how specific do you want it? Will be Honza Bartoszek from Litormierice in the north of Czech Republic, and Quaylan O'Neill Ford from Ennis, County Clare. We, three of us, live in Prague, and we play together in an Irish bar, and we are going to play a couple of concerts this week in Ireland together. So this song is called The Wind and the Water. With her bare hands and had to surrender. lost your heart to the winds of the sea, please don't blame it on me. I am no sea of tears, I am no mystery, I hold no treasure deep, promised by poetry that's lost on me. When she was found near the cliffs on the shore, no sailors ever set sail anymore, and they stayed on the island to honor the girl they adored, till the day that the storm came to town, and powerful winds forced the villagers down, and still to this day if they hear but a sound, they find themselves pinned to the ground. And I am the rain cloud, and the air goes its way. If you're looking for justice or sympathy, don't expect it from me. I am no ray of light, I don't have my answers right. I am no painted sky or gate to live by and by. I'll deliver your messages day and night in a bottle of hell by dumb and white. I'll carry your vessels to anywhere, and I'll always be there. And I am the ocean, and the tigers and tanks. And if you lost your heart to the winds of the sea, please don't blame it on me. And I am a rain cloud, and the air goes its way. If you're looking for justice or sympathy, don't expect it from me.
Thank you. That was lovely. I love how you're telling people, don't ask for sympathy from me. That's good. I love
Yeah,
it.
just doing my job is basically what you said.
Yeah. Well, we're drawing near. Any other thoughts or reflections on what Loes and the link brought? Any other thoughts to close? Reflections?
Should we get a big round of applause for Lee? And
Yeah, thanks. Especially, I mean, Liam had the late show last night. Y'all were playing late too. Thanks for being up this morning. Thanks for helping make this space happen. Thanks again to the organizers and to Uri. There's so many good things happening later. I did want to plug the square dance, which is going to be happening tomorrow at 4 p.m. I'm calling the square dance. I've never called a square dance before. So I just sang a solo, like I got through that. I've never done that before. So y'all have been really great. Maybe the square dance will go just as good, but it's only going to do that if people come. So come to that. Thank you again so much to all these folks for being here. Thank you. And happy to talk more later. Thanks.
Hand free one.